Okay, here are my spoiler-filled thoughts on Quantumania. There's a lot we need to talk about with this film. So again, warning, this is going to be my spoiler-filled thoughts and review on the film. If you saw my non-spoiler review, you know I enjoyed this movie. But as a fan of filmmaking, I also understand the criticism that it's getting. So since I'm a glass-half-full kind of guy, let's start off with the criticisms I have for the film and some changes I would have made. Now, there are a lot of issues I had with this film from a technical perspective. I thought the script was alright, some of the dialogue just wasn't that great, and the direction really wasn't that good. And you can see that in certain actors' performances like Cassie Lang. And the editing in this film was just not great at times. There was really weird and abrupt cuts, odd sequencing of shots. There's a shot where Kang takes Janet Van Dyne through a portal, and I shit you not, in the next scene, Kang is sitting on the throne having two of his henchmen bring her to him. But that's just a minor criticism that I noticed. I wasn't a big fan of the rebellion freedom fighters in the quantum realm. I mean, talk about wasting William Jackson Harper and Bill Murray. It was cool to see him as a bad guy for once, so I guess he's kind of following in his real life footsteps now. Allegedly. They obviously set that up to have that scene where Cassie sends a signal out to all of the freedom fighters to come help them out. But I don't think you even needed that. Especially when you have the Deus Ex Machina giant freaking intelligent ants that come in at the end to help freaking end everything quickly. I just felt like that was a repetitive process, and it's a very generic trope. And I think this film actually could have benefited with Hank Pym actually going on his own third adventure by himself, figuring out with the ants instead of just having them show up at the end. That way we can even focus more time on the two Wasps in Michelle Pfeiffer, who already did a great job, and her daughter Hope. We get more time with Wasp, plural. Side note, but I don't really understand the science and why Scott's still super slow when he's big. Technically, he's a microscopic level, so even though he's bigger, wouldn't he still kind of walk the same? That's a very big nitpick, so don't worry about that. But the biggest change I would have made was in the ending. I would have actually preferred if Scott and Kang both lost. It thematically would have helped this film out better. It's a movie about time. And that's really the entire Ant-Man franchise. Scott has done time for doing the right thing. Whether that be in the original Ant-Man, Captain America Civil War, and even in Ant-Man and the Wasp when he's trapped in the quantum realm. He does the time for trying to do the right thing. And we actually see some of that with Cassie in this film. It runs in the family. So I just think Scott having to quote-unquote do time by making sure that Kang doesn't win and him being trapped in the quantum realm would have fit so well. Also, I would have had Michael Pena in the beginning of the movie recapping all of the events leading up to this movie. In the San Francisco scenes, it would have been perfect. Not having Luis in this movie was a damn mistake. But moving on to everything I enjoyed, I really liked the family dynamic. Michelle Pfeiffer was an MVP of this movie, and they made Michael Douglas extra funny in this movie for no ass reason. A lot of people said Hope was barely in the movie, but I thought she was in the movie for the most pivotal moments. It was pretty great. Albeit the moment at the end felt kind of rushed and it didn't really feel earned to me. But if we changed the ending and she doesn't help out, I would have loved it. Even more than I already do. I loved Kang and MODOK so damn much. They completely worked for me. I mean, obviously, Jonathan Majors' Kang was out there killing shit, dropping bars. The way he performed it was damn near Shakespearean. I loved it. I mean, just the way that Jonathan Majors was playing Kang was so perfect. He brought an intimidation factor that was much needed. And I love that when he spoke, there wasn't really much score going on in the background. You really just heard his dialogue, and his voice was just perfect. I love that whole scene of him going Thanos, being like, fine, I'll do it myself, and just starts taking out them freedom fighters, showing off all of his freaking tools and his weapons. It was fucking crazy. And that whole fight scene between him and Ant-Man, really, it was a beatdown. He was beating the brakes off of Scott Lang. I was like, yeah! It did feel kind of anticlimactic the way he supposedly died. I actually have a theory on what actually happened to him. I don't think he really died. And him getting taken out by the ants was kind of disappointing, but this was just our introduction to Kang. I don't think this is going to be the full powered Kang that we're going to see later on in the other Avengers films. And I'll be honest, MODOK completely worked for me. This is how I've always seen MODOK in any media. A super intelligent killing machine that's just really annoying. And having that be Darren Cross was perfect. He was so damn funny. And when he finally stops being a dick and helps out the Ant family, he let out one of the funniest lines when he said, I'm gonna die an Avenger. My entire theater cracked up. That was a really funny line. And we had his little hand on Scott's face was so great. I loved everything they did with him. I just laughed every single time he was on screen. I think it was on purpose. Another one of my favorite scenes was the possibility scene when Scott goes into the multiversal engine and a bunch of different possibilities and probabilities start coming at him and they start talking to each other. I loved that. You get more Paul Rudd talking to himself. Who doesn't want more of that? And I think that means all variants are just different possibilities or probabilities throughout the multiverse. So that was a cool nugget. And I loved Veb. Keep Veb safe at all times. You have holes. He was funny. He was just so funny. But overall, I thought it was a very enjoyable film. I like that paranoid feeling Scott had at the end when he was like, I got him, right? Yeah, we probably don't have to worry about him again. But you could definitely tell they shot that scene like later on in the movie. I think this movie was actually supposed to end with my ending, with Scott actually being trapped in the quantum realm. But they decided to change it last minute, which leads us to our mid and post-credit scenes. In the mid-credit scenes, we meet 3 other variants of Kang. Immortus, Ramatut, and I think that's the Scarlet Centurion, but he just looks different. I'll be honest, conceptually, I thought this scene was dope, but the execution felt like this was filmed like last week or 2 weeks ago. Even the way Jonathan Majors performed some of these characters just felt like it was a last second thing, and they really just wanted to get it out for the movie. But in that scene, we meet the Council of Kangs, the infinite other amount of Kangs. And they're most likely going to talk about how this version of the Avengers is not to be trifled with because they actually killed a version of themselves, the most powerful version probably. Which I have no doubt in my mind this is going to lead directly into Kang Dynasty. And finally, we get to the post-credit scene, which I think is pretty much just a clip from Loki Season 2. We meet another variant of Kang Victor Timely, as he talks about the theory of time. And in the crowd is Loki and Mobius. Loki obviously having a very keen interest on Victor Timely, as he's a variant of Kang. And I can't wait to see where that picks up. But all in all, I had such a fun time with Quantumania. There are obvious a lot of flaws. Like I mentioned earlier, from a filmmaking perspective, a lot of technical issues. But I know how to separate that as a fan and consumer of superhero and comic media. I just don't understand why we put a movie directed by Peyton Reed and written by a Rick and Morty writer who's writing his first ever feature film. I don't understand why we put this under a magnifying glass of like an Oscar contender. This just needs to be a fun, entertaining comic book movie. And that's what it was. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you thought about the movie down in the comments below.